Hi there, this is Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films, and welcome to our random review. Today's random review is from 1941, and it's All That Money Can Buy, directed by William Dieterle, also known as Here Is a Man, and also known as The Devil Daniel Webster. This is the new Criterion Blu-ray release. Spy number 214, but I always had the Eureka DVD release, number 70, on which has an absolutely mighty booklet which contains the story that the film is based on, with beautiful illustrations. It has a word by the author, Stephen Vincent Benet. There's a little piece by William Dieterle. I mean, it's one of the best booklets you'll ever see. So even though I have upgraded to the Criterion Blu-ray, I'm not going to get rid of the MOC DVD. Beautiful cover, Walter Houston there. Now this is a film which is fascinating politically. I mean, I tried to keep politics out of this channel, but it is a fascinating little film from a political standpoint. And it's one of these booklets on the Blu-ray by Criterion. It has a wonderful cast. Edward Arnold and Walter Houston is Mr. Scratch, the devil. Now obviously there's constant debate on who's the best Hollywood devil in front of the camera. I mean, Peter Stormare in Constantine seems to get rather a lot of love. Obviously Viggo Mortensen, The Prophecy, Tim Curry in Legend, and Al Pacino in The Devil's Advocate. Okay, maybe not Al Pacino in The Devil's Advocate, but I would put forth that Walter Houston as Mr. Scratch is the best cinematic devil. He is just, his grin, which seems to contain a lot more teeth than it really should, his little hat, and his eyes, especially in the last few frames of the film, which probably scared the audience right out of their seat in 1941. The music of the film was done by Bernard Herrmann, who won the Oscar. It was edited by Robert Wise, who obviously would go on to direct himself. And as I said, it's a fascinating little moral tale, but it is shot absolutely beautifully. And it's interesting that it's got a Blu-ray release now. Certainly, if you look at the way it's shot, the lighting, Blu-ray really makes it pop. The use of light and dark, the German expressionism is just pops. It's a really nice cover, even though again I really like the image of Walter Houston. Maybe if he was grinning it would be even more wonderful, but that's probably too disturbing. From a technical standpoint, absolutely beautiful, and there are some kind of negative image inserts, almost like just a frame is dropped in, a la The Exorcist. So it's kind of ahead of its time the way it looks. I mean, it's 1941, so there is a lot of influence in Citizen Kane, as far as just gorgeous black and white cinematography. So the story is about a young farmer who just has bad luck after bad luck. And then he's at the end of his tether, he's behind a local loan shark, and he, in the middle of transferring a calf onto a cart, his wife gets hurt. He takes a bag of seeds out of his loft, or a barn loft, to pay off or help have a little bit of payment back to the loan shark, and the bag rips. So he says, "Oh, I would sell my soul to the devil for 2 nickels." And then, of course, Walter Houston appears as Mr. Scratch, all smiling and wanting him to sign a contract. And once he does, and magically money appears from the floor of the barn, and it's fairly fairly predictable what happens. Money goes to his head, blah blah blah. On this other side is Daniel Webster, who we already know in an earlier scene has the devil in his ear. Now, whether he sold his soul for 7 years of prosperity, who knows? But he's a big man, even though he didn't make president. He's a Republican. Everybody in the film is pretty much Republican, apart from one Democrat. But strangely enough, Daniel Webster even says, even although this man is opposed to me and has different beliefs, I respect the fact that he can speak his mind and he has different beliefs. And it's like, well, that's refreshing, isn't it? So obviously things go bad to worse regarding his family. The young guy becomes, his head is bigger than his mouth. And then, of course, it comes to repayment time, and then he runs to Daniel Webster to try and get him out of this, because Daniel Webster's part lawyer and part politician. And then there's a wonderful trial, which doesn't actually last that long, but it's a wonderful little film, fantastically shot. It's a cast that you'll recognise all their faces, even though you won't recognise their names. Like Jane Darwell, who's in Grapes of Wrath, as Jabez Stone, played by James Craig, who's fairly wooden. Simone Simon turns up as the new foreign exotic nanny. It's very kind of against the foreign and against the not American. There's a beautiful bit just before the trial where Daniel Webster claims that Mr. Scratch is a foreign prince, to which Walter Houston has a wonderful few lines that doesn't really get concentrated on, and you do kind of feel that if the film was made in 1951 and not 1941, that exchange would have got a lot more attention in the film and maybe been expanded on. But when Daniel Webster accuses Mr. Scratch of being a foreign prince, he's like, no, I was there when the first Indian was wronged. I was there when the first slave ship was on its way to Congo. I was standing on the deck, and he repeats that I was there, which almost reflects the I'll be there that Henry Fonda does in Grapes of Wrath. But again, it's not really focused on, because the film is very patriotic. It's very jingoistic to some extent, and it does give you this idea of the founding fathers just found America and all of a sudden America was theirs, and it does kind of skirt over the dark history and the genocide and the bloodshed that actually ended up in Americans with their new land. So that little exchange, you do feel would have been magnified if it had been made in 1951 rather than 1941. But again, we're in World War Two, so you don't want to think about negative stuff because there's enough negative stuff, as America would find out fairly soon. But just the idea of, don't call me foreign because I've been here longer than you have, and I was here when you started doing bad things that you shouldn't have been doing. So that's kind of fascinating, and obviously the message of the film is, to the working people of America, don't get big-headed, don't get greedy, work yourself to the bone and then die. That's reward enough. Don't go looking for a shortcut to success. It's okay for rich people to get rich and have success, but poor people, no, you should work yourselves to death basically and let the rich people be rich. So even although it's a fun film, beautifully shot, well acted, there is this underlying thing of working people should stay working people, and the rich should be left to be rich. We don't want new rich coming in. We're quite happy being the top of the pyramid, and we don't want working people to suddenly find fortunes and become rich too. So it is a complete Republican film. It's a capitalist film, but it's warning certain people against capitalism, certain people about getting rich quick, but it's okay for the rich to get rich and continue to be rich. So it does have a fascinating little kind of undercurrent in this kind of, it is a light moral fable, but there is a lot of darkness underneath it, especially when you think about how America actually became America. So even although that front image looks jolly and light, obviously there's a big dark shadow in the back, and that kind of sums the film up. As I said, it looks gorgeous. The lighting is just absolutely wonderful. It's a 4K restoration. There's a commentary by film historian Bruce Eder and Stephen C. Smith, the biographer of composer Bernard Herrmann. There's a new restoration demonstration. Alec Baldwin reads the short story in which the film is based, and as I said, in the Eureka DVD you get the short story with beautiful illustrations. There's an episode of the Criterion Channel series Observations in Film Art about the film's editing. There's a comparison of the differences between the July 1941 preview version of the film, Here Is a Man, and the film's 1943 re-release as The Devil and Daniel Webster. And there's a Columbia Workshops radio adaptations of Benet's short stories The Devil and Daniel Webster, and Daniel Webster and the Sea Serpent, both featuring music by Bernard Herrmann. And there's a trailer, and again there's an essay in the booklet. So it's 106 minutes, it flies by, it's very enjoyable, but it's also fascinating to look at the politics of the film as well, because that's the thing, people think Hollywood is this liberal left-wing place, whereas it's actually pretty conservative about its messages, and this film is no different, even though it's disguised. Well, I suppose it's not really that disguised, it is fairly conservative itself, but it's still a lot of fun. So thanks very much for watching. Let me know if you've seen The Devil and Daniel Webster, or All That Money That Can Buys, or Here Is a Man. And let me know if you think Walter Huston is the best cinematic Satan. Another fascinating thing about the film is actually the opening titles, because it just separates the people who worked in the film as in front of the camera and in back of camera. So there's no separate credits for the writers, for Dieterle the director or Bernard Herrmann. They're just names in the list. Now granted, Dieterle's name's last, but it's not as if directed by William Dieterle. So even the credits are kind of interesting. It's literally just in front of camera and back of camera, which is a fairly novel way of doing it. So thanks so much for watching. Please let me know in the comments what you think of the film, and hopefully you'll join me again for more random reviews. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.